Call the revenue meeting to order. Can we please call the roll?
Senator Case,
Present.
Senator French,
Here.
Senator Ide,
Here.
Senator Pappas.
Here.
Chairman McEwen.
Here.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Well, welcome everybody. We're gonna start out with Senate File 49, Tangible Personal Property Index and Depreciation. And with that, bring up the Department of Revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ken Gill. I'm the Administrator of the Property Tax Division of the Department of Revenue. Pretty straightforward bill, Mr. Chairman. Basically, tangible personal property is valued currently as it is with depreciation and trending into depreciation until it reaches its floor, its depreciated floor. And that's defined in this bill of being 20%. So once it reaches that floor, then no trending or depreciation can take it above 20% of its acquisition cost in this proposal. I passed out a few handouts, and if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start with an amendment that we would offer for your consideration.
That's fine.
Okay. It's just on one page here, very short paragraph. Basically, what this amendment does is carves out the property and the personal property that is assessed by the state of Wyoming by the Property Tax Division. Main reason for that, Mr. Chairman, is we don't really have indexes and that sort of thing in our state appraisals. We're appraising a company as a whole. So we're appraising personal property that isn't even located in Wyoming and probably never will be. But we're appraising that property, and then we're taking the Wyoming portion of that company for its assessed valuation. And then we're even digging further down to the county and then to the tax district. So just something for you to consider to carve out the state assessments on this. You'll find across the nation where there are states that have exempted personal property, 100%. Of course, they have other taxes that make up for that, but where they've exempted it, most of those states have carved out no centrally assessed or department assessed, state assessed property is still taxable. And state assessed property would be like railroads, airlines, electric companies, municipal electric, telecommunications. So it would be those types of companies. Then also on this amendment, the second half of the amendment carves out mobile homes, titled mobile homes. Mobile homes in Wyoming are personal property if they're titled. So if I own a mobile home and I wish to sell it to you, I have a title just like I have for my vehicle. And I sign that title, I get it notarized, and I sign it over to you. And then you would take it to the clerk and transfer that title to your name, just like a vehicle. So they are personal property, so that would remove them from this bill also. So just for your consideration on that. To do this proposed bill, the CAMA system will need to be updated. Currently it doesn't have the technology to automate when it reaches a depreciated floor, then look at 20% of the acquisition value. And now that I've said acquisition value, that's another change that I would propose in this bill, and that would be on page 2, line 11, right in the middle where it says acquisition. Maybe a better wording there would be something like reported installed cost. So the other handouts that I provided you with are the declarations that are sent out to companies to report their assets. And there's a couple packets of them, they're stapled together. And you'll see that one, the ATD 40 is for oil and gas equipment. And then the other one, the ATD 25, is for commercial and industrial personal property, not oil and gas. So you'll notice on there, in both, on the instructions, it says it needs the year built, year acquired, and year installed. and it's the installed cost that we're asking for there. So just something for you to consider, maybe using, instead of acquisition value, maybe reported installed cost. One other point that I had, Mr. Chairman. There are three approaches to value in appraisal. When we appraise property, and this not only in the assessor's office at the state, my appraisers, fee appraisers that come and appraise your house. There's three approaches to value. You have the cost approach. So we're looking at a replacement cost new. Then we apply depreciation. So that's RCNLD, replacement cost new less depreciation. We have the income approach. So how does the income approach work? In this bill, talking about personal property, I could envision a company that rents equipment. Maybe they rent lawn and garden equipment, they rent backhoes, things like that for folks to come rent, do the job, bring them back. That asset produces an income. And so we can come up with a value for those assets by the income it produces. So that's the income approach. Then we have the market approach, the third approach to value. The market approach is looking at sales. What you have an asset that you need to value, you look at assets that have sold. So that's the market approach. In this proposal, this is outside the scope of the three accepted approaches to value. You know, we're depreciating something and then we're saying it's basically frozen at that value. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
So what's our current floor right now?
Mr. Chairman, right now it is 20% or 80% depreciated.
So that's really no change.
You're right, Mr. Chairman, that is no change. It's 20% now. But currently once it reaches that 20% floor, we still trend to today's dollar. We're not trending to that asset, we're trending today's dollar to make up for inflation. You know, if it was an item that was bought 50 years ago, the trending factor is going to bring it to today's dollar that equates to that 50-year-old asset's dollar. And then we depreciate it down the 80% if it's reached that floor.
So as this is written, and if I think I understand you, we're not going to trend it anymore.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Once it reaches that floor, according to this bill, it will freeze basically at that value as long as that value is not more than the reported cost, the original reported cost. So correct, it would freeze.
So my next question, we're including installation, intangible personal property?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that's the accepted practice in appraisal for personal property. That would include the installation of a widget. That would include it could include the freight to get it there. The total cost of actually putting that asset in operation.
So is the freight and the installation also paying sales tax?
Mr. Chairman, not an expert on sales tax. I guess it would depend on the item, right? You know, some equipment is exempted, some is not. I'm not an expert on the sales tax on freight or installation.
So some of it is probably getting sales tax.
Mr. Chairman, it very well could be getting sales tax, yes, absolutely. But remember, this is a property tax. So this is a tax on property assets owned by a company.
The angle I'm going at this is we have the widget. We pay taxes to get the widget there. And we pay taxes for the installation and all those parts. And then we add it into the total value for tangible personal property, where the installation will now be taxed forever also.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. That is the total installed cost. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll hit on a little bit of what you brought up. That was what I underlined here. You know, you're you're wanting to amend this from acquisition value to reported installed cost. Isn't there a lot of personal property that isn't installed? I mean, you've got, what about a saddle when you throw it on the horse? I mean, how are you gonna tax that installation? I mean, it's just sort of an example of, you know, acquisition value. It could be potentially acquisition cost instead of installed cost. I mean, I think we're getting so broad here that we're tripping everybody up on wondering how to report what their personal property is worth. So,
Sure.
just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do have one more question
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
along those lines. Would you be comfortable if we took acquisition value out and used the word purchased value?
Mr. Chairman, typically the companies are used to reporting what that widget costs them to put into production, for lack of a better term. But typically that's what they are used to reporting. So that could cause some problems with some of the private industry, and I'm sure they're here and they can speak to that. But currently the accepted practice is to look at the installed cost of that asset.
And I'm kind of saying this tongue in cheek, but I would think if they could get the installation cost pulled off of their tangible personal property tax, they'd figure it out pretty quickly. But we'll see what they have to say. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please state your name and agency.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not an agency. If you're waiting for an agency, I can wait. Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to make sure I didn't overstep somebody's spot here. Dixie Huxtable, Converse County Assessor, here today to talk about some of the things that Administrator Gill already addressed. In Senate File 49, at the beginning of the bill, it talks about all taxable property shall be annually valued at fair market value, and that the Department of Revenue will prescribe the rules for us to do that with. There are 3 generally accepted appraisal methods, as Mr. Gill explained: the income, the cost, and the sales. And each approach has its inherent strengths and weaknesses. For personal property, the cost approach is the most widely used for mass appraisal because that's where you have the most data available. When appraising personal property, and this is information I'm providing to you from the International Association of Assessing Officers, and it's also incorporated into our rules. We're to follow those standards. When appraising personal property, you must you must be at an end-use trade level, the consumer level. That piece of equipment in use, that's how you're valuing how that piece of property is valued into the company's business. If it's not being used, it's not taxed. So when you install that personal property and you put it into your business, then it becomes installed use. And the companies are used to that. That is what our renditions have had forever, that I've been here 25 years. So it's installed reported cost. And so I think what Mr. Gill was getting to, and what we would recommend along with that and support, is the change of that acquisition value to reported installed cost, because that's what's on the language already. And so we're looking at valuing these property based on value and use. And so let's go to that acquisition report comment. I wanted to give you a little information. I did ask the Department of Revenue to do a report for me based on 2024 renditions. Statewide, in the oil and gas industry, 86% of the accounts that are out there reported. We got installed reported cost from the majority of them. Now, I'm going to tell you that not all of them do. They will list the piece of equipment And then we have to use best available information to find out what that is. There are still companies that don't report to us what that actual cost is. But we do our best to find the information. On the business personal property side, which is your commercial businesses, your agricultural people, the industrial people, 60% reported. 40% of the people that we are taxing do not report or give us a value of any kind, or maybe even equipment that's used in their business. So that is its own issue, and when you put in this bill that it's acquisition value and we don't have an acquisition value because it's not been reported, we're gonna have to go to best available information. Manuals, blue books, whatever information we can find to get us that. I'm gonna use an example in my county where if a company doesn't report, let's use a motel as an example. I'll go look at a similar sized quality motel. What are they reporting? See if I can come up with a value that would fall in line with what maybe Marshall and Swift, our costing provider, does. So there are ways for us to get that information, but when you put it into statute that it has to be 20% of the acquisition value and we don't get that value, then what is our alternative? Just to make sure that we're still going to have to use best available information, because other places in the statute, that's what it tells us to do. I also wanted to talk about value and use. I touched on it a little bit in that, in the language from the IAAO. The property is, fair market value is deemed value in use for the IAAO, the International Assessing Association officers. Value in use is what we're looking at for personal property. Is there a value in that use? Obviously, if it's not being used, there's not a value and it's not taxable. But if that property has an economic life that the department has declared, for example, is a 14-year life, and it's still operating at 25 years, it's still providing income to that taxpayer, is there not a value in use? That's what we're looking at. So it may be the 20% floor, that may be its value in use, but it may be more or less than that. The indexing is the issue that I think for the most part we're seeing causing the biggest problem. Those indexing factors that are going well beyond the original cost, even after it's been depreciated to 20%. The Assessors Association met this week. We have agreed that that is an issue, but you heard Administrator Gill say we can't change that system until we get upgraded, which should be at the end of this year. We recognize there is an issue with the indexing. The indexing is separate from the depreciation, and we realize there is an issue with that indexing past the economic life of the piece of equipment. But unfortunately, right now, within the current version of the system that we have, we can't make that alteration. If you're going to do that, you're going to be doing it in a workaround, and I'm going to use that fairly loosely. A county assessor may find a workaround, so there may be different answers in different counties. Respectfully, we would ask that on this bill, along with changing that language from acquisition value to be reported installed cost, make the effective date January 1 of 2026. The department has told us that based on the schedule with the camera provider, we should all be on the new version of the system by this fall. That gives us time to work on this indexing issue and get that resolved. So that's the two amendments that the Assessors Association would bring to you, and we would be happy to address any other questions you have. We support the amendments, of course, that the department has provided. We don't have much to do with the state assessed except put it on the tax roll, and then mobile homes create their own issue just because they're personal property. With that, I would stand for any questions.
So we have a lot of ranchers out there that have saddles that date back to 1900. And they're in barns and they're kind of rotten, but they're emotionally attached to them or keeping them for some reason, but they don't use them. Are those no longer taxed?
Mr. Chairman, if the taxpayer reports them as being used, they would still be taxed. If they've removed them from the rendition, that they're no longer in use, then no, they would not be taxed. I get renditions every day. I processed one last week where a rancher took a tractor off He still has the tractor. He's got sentimental value and he's using it for parts because I drive by it. I can see that it's used for parts. We took it off the tax roll. He said, I'm not using this anymore. It's not used in my business. Please remove it. And it's off of the tax roll effective the day he told me that. If he leaves it on there, then I'm going to leave it on because I don't know anything different than he's using it in his business to generate whatever income is driving his business. If you don't report to me, and I'm going to be honest, the ag industry is well below 60% reporting. In my county, they're closer to 40% reporting. They don't do a really good job reporting. We have to still find that taxable property and value it, and we're going to use the best available information. Maybe when we field checked it, maybe based on the size of the operation, the type of the operation, commercial property, we may do that based on square footage of business use. There's lots of different methods in the appraisal world for us to use, and we use the best that we can. And of course, the taxpayer has an appeal remedy, always. They get their rendition and it's on a separate account, or they get their tax notice and it's on a separate account. There's always the ability for the taxpayer to appeal, and they do. And that's usually when we get the list, and then we make the adjustments.
Senator Ide.
Just real quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Used a few of these analogies, ranchers and tractors and saddles, and it's a good thing everybody can kind of visualize. And then you guys effectively drive around and police it by drive-by to see if they're using that tractor or not, to keep them honest. I guess the part I don't understand is, does it have to be for a commercial use? I mean, what if that farmer wants to drive his grandson around on his tractor for pleasure, or they throw the saddle on the horse and they're just going out to go fishing? How do you guys discern the difference of all of that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, great question. We rely on that reported rendition to come up with the value and what we include. We put those items on individually. So when the taxpayer reports to us what their business is and what the equipment is that they're using, that's what we put on the tax roll. If they don't report, we use best available information. And I will absolutely agree that my staff, when they're out doing their regular once every 6 years field check on a ranch that has asked for and been granted the classification of agricultural, look and see if there's any equipment out there. That doesn't mean I put it on the tax roll, but I want to verify, one, that they're actually doing the agricultural business and that they're reporting everything they should be, just like the grocery store owner is reporting his. So that's my job, as doing an audit of my accounts to make sure that we are picking up everything that we should. I don't think you will find any assessors in this state that are going out there through somebody's barn and making a checklist of saddles or tack or something like that, unless there's an issue with that taxpayer and they've asked us to come out and do an audit or a review. But the drive-by, as you refer to, typically that's because that taxpayer has reported a certain amount of item or a certain classification. For example, I'm ag, but I don't have any equipment. Is that viable? If that agricultural taxpayer is earning the classification and being granted that as an agricultural producer, but he's producing, in his affidavit, he's producing hay, should he have some equipment on his place? Maybe, maybe not, maybe he's leasing it, but it's on his onus to tell us that. And so all we're doing is trying to make sure that we're keeping everybody as fair and honest as we can, equally across the board.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assessor, when you assess equipment, and you said if it's being used, do you have a amount of time it's being used? Because I've got equipment I drag behind a tractor that I use for 1 day a year, maybe 2 days a year. That's it. Then it parks and I'm parking in the weeds, and a year later I hook onto it and drag it around for 1 day, maybe 2. So the fact that I just use it, it's taxed? Or do you have, well, it needs to be used every month, every five days a month? Or is it, if I just use it, it doesn't matter, a time frame?
Mr. Chairman, Senator French, this is a self-reporting state, so we are asking you to report the equipment that you use in your business. And it's maybe 1 day, it may be 30 days. It's up to the taxpayer to report to us what they have. We do not prorate. We do not have that ability to prorate unless you're using equipment across county lines. And then we have a process in place that we would prorate that tractor. You use part of it in one county and part of it in the other. But typically, we do not ask for a certain number of days. There is some language in our rules that cover people coming in to do business here for 30 days need to report. But typically, for most of our businesses, including the ag industry, we ask the taxpayer to report to us what they're using, realizing that baler on any given year may not get used if you didn't have enough rain to put up the hay, but it's still equipment that you have. And unless you pull it off of your list, I'm gonna tax it for that year. I'm not gonna enhance the value on a year when you do it a lot, but I'm also not gonna take it off when you only use it 1 day. It's on for the year and that's the value.
Thank you.
Is there a process for county assessors to be licensed to do appraisals?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the Department of Revenue has an education component to their rules, and assessors are required to be permanently certified within their guidelines of permanent certification. They have 2 levels of temporary and a permanent. There's a specific set of rules on how to get there, and they offer a wide variety of classes on what can qualify you to get that certification. Personal property is included, land value is included, industrial is included. They have a wide variety, and it takes 90 hours of core classes. And I can certainly get Mr. Gill to go through that if you'd like to. But yes, there is a certification process that you have to go through to keep your county assessor title, and anybody that deals with value in my office must go through that process.
So how long do they have to complete it?
Oh, Ken might have to help me out on this, Mr. Chairman. I believe it's a 6-year period that we have. You start with beginning fundamental classes and then USPAP, which is a standards and procedures class that you have to take. And then from there, you can choose some of the options that you have. But I believe it's a 6-year period to get that qualification. And assessors, I believe, have 1 term. They have to get certified within their first term, but I'll turn that question over to Department of Revenue.
Mr. Chairman, Ken Gill, Property Tax Division. Yeah, great question. The assessor themselves, once they're elected, if they want to run for election again in 4 years, they have to be certified by then. They have to be certified going into that second term, if you will. The clock does start ticking once they take the first course, 6 years to complete and get to that permanent certification, and that's for staff. So, and Assessor Huxtable is correct. Anyone making a value judgment in an assessor's office has to be certified by the Department of Revenue that they are a certified property tax appraiser. So, and we offer education, a lot of education every year. Some of it is more theory, general appraisal theory. And then a lot of it, as the years have gone on, it's very, very Wyoming law specific. So in fact, this year in October, we will have our class called Wyoming Assessment Practices, and it will be totally centered around Wyoming law and our CAMA system. We'll have some CAMA training, obviously. The Assessor Huxtable just said that we're going to a new platform here this fall. So we'll be bringing in our vendor to do some very extensive training in the programming of that. So yes, I have, in fact, right now, I like to hand sign the certificates. We issue a certificate to all the assessors and their staff that are certified yearly. I have a stack like that on my desk right now, waiting for my signature, and I just haven't been able to get to them yet this week. So, and then we send a letter to the county commissioners telling them what staff is certified. And we also send a letter to the State Board of Equalization listing every staff in every county that is certified, including the assessor.
How many of our assessors right now are fully qualified and licensed?
I believe all of our assessors currently right now are permanently certified. I don't have that number right in front of me. I apologize for that. But most of our assessors have been in the business for a while. And so they are all permanently certified as far as I know. There might be a temporary certified appraiser out there or assessor, but I don't think so. I think they're all permanently certified. And to keep that permanent certification, they have to take continuing education hours every year to maintain that.
And I'm sorry, I'm asking these questions more for my own knowledge as we move forward. Could you get back to me on the number of each?
Yeah,
Permanent and
assessors,
temporary?
assessors and staff,
Just assessors.
just assessors, absolutely. I'll email you as soon as we get out of this meeting.
Thank you. Seems to me that could be frustrating. If you get an assessor qualified and then 4 years later they run for office and don't get reelected. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Let's move on to further public comment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Ryan McConaughey with the Petroleum Association of Wyoming. Pete wanted me to let you know that he's over in another committee talking about EOR issues. And so we just wanted to let you all know that we generally support this bill, would have no issues with either of the amendments that were offered by previous commenters. And we do have Bobby Ralston with Occidental on the Zoom to answer any questions that you may have.
How we doing, Mr. Detai?
Good, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Travis Detai with the Wyoming Mining Association. Senator Case, good to see you back on the committee, sir. I'll be very short because I've got to jump to another committee, but we support the bill, Mr. Chairman.
That was easy. Thank you. Anybody else who supports the bill want to talk? Oh, you did catch the humor.
Mr. Chairman, Keith Kennedy, Wyoming Wheat Growers, and we support the bill as well, and I will leave it at that, absent questions.
I'd be afraid to ask. I might change your position.
Mr. Chairman, Wyoming Farm Bureau, I represent Wyoming Farm Bureau. Again, supporting the bill, and I would like to address the topic that was come up about ag being some of the non-reporting. That is an effort that my organization has taken, that every year we put something in our newsletter that you need to do this and to make sure that it's up to date. So we're trying. I don't know if it's getting any better, but we'll do it again this year, because one of the things is making sure that you have on there things that you still have, that you haven't sold it, to make sure that that list is up to date. But sitting in support of the bill, take any questions you or the committee may have.
Thank you. We have anybody else? We have one on Zoom.
Ms. Ralston registered but has not joined the Zoom.
Okay. Any other further public comment? I think with that, we will close public comment. What's your pleasure? Bill has been moved and seconded. And we have two amendments. That pretty much say the same thing. Does anybody prefer one font over the other? They are word for word the same.
Mr. Chairman, I guess probably this one is in LSO form and the other one probably was handed to someone. They're probably the same amendment. Would that be right? You want to look? Yeah, that's what it is.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that amendment.
So we really only have one amendment. It's,
Basically to take mobile homes out of personal tangible property, tangible personal property.
well, no, they're not taken out.
They won't receive the.
Just look.
They won't be valued as all the other tangible personal property.
Excludes, yeah, you're right.
Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm not smart enough to understand. We heard a little testimony and I still wasn't clear of why, in particular, mobile homes come out of tangible personal property. I mean, we talked about titles and that's all put in at the county. But can anybody explain that further to me? Thank you.
I was just ready to ask you to come back up, Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, it takes the mobile homes out of this, this language of 20% of the acquisition. We don't get an acquisition for mobile homes or a reported installed cost for mobile homes. We just don't get those because they're titled. And so that number is not available. That number would never be available. So even if a mobile home depreciated down to the floor, the 20%, in this case being personal property, we would have no acquisition cost to look at to compare that 20% floor to the acquisition in the current language.
So if I installed my own trailer or mobile home, manufactured home, I won't step on anybody's toes with the terminology. Do I have to report my own installation costs? If I do it myself, do I have to say I did it and here's how many hours I had?
Mr. Chairman, no,
Okay.
you don't. Mobile homes are valued as personal property when they're titled. And they still sell that way too. When you go to sell a mobile home, you use the title just like your vehicle. So basically, this would take mobile homes out of this proposal because we don't have an acquisition value, current language in the proposal for that mobile home. We appraise them, but we don't have an acquisition value. And mainly to appraise mobile homes, we use a cost approach, replacement cost, new, less depreciation.
Okay, thank you. Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So this, by taking mobile homes out of this bill, they won't qualify for the benefits of getting this down below 20% if, in fact, they, get there someday with their mobile home. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, kind of. So the mobile home, once it depreciates down to that floor, yes, in this proposed, the way it's written right now, the proposal says once it gets to that 20% floor, we need to look at the acquisition value, the acquisition cost, whatever that language be. We have to look at that and make sure that it doesn't go above that. Typically, mobile homes never would anyway. They typically depreciate every year and continue to depreciate. So it just pulls it out of the, mobile homes aren't trended like regular business, personal property is. So it just carves them out and makes it clear that mobile homes aren't included to go to the 20% floor, look at the acquisition value, and make sure that that floor is not higher than the acquisition value, which typically would not happen. And also this amendment pulls out the state assessed accounts too.
Yeah, that's the first part, 33-19-13-102M. That's all the state assessed. And that's mines and mining claims, pipeline companies, electric utilities, railroad companies, rail car companies, telecommunications companies, and other public utilities. And then there's some other leased things that are in there. Warehouses, things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Oh, you got a question?
Before you leave. Quick follow-up, sorry, Mr. Chairman, keep asking questions. I'm trying to figure this thing out, whether I like it or not. So if a mobile home, it was purchased for $50,000, do you guys have an index where you just keep depreciating that in the assessor's office, or how does that work? So you don't have to reappraise it or, look to see what the one sold for it next, if a market approach to value or an income approach to value or, anyway, could you comment on that?
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, yeah, great question, Senator Ide. So mobile homes are sold like cars, okay? Whereas if you sell a house, real property, you sell a house, that is deeded in the clerk's office, right? That deed is turned in the clerk's office along with a statement of consideration. If you sell a mobile home, there's no recordation of that, other than the title changes hands, but there's no real recordation. So they're totally different animals. They're not appraised by using sales. So very, very, very seldom would someone appraise a mobile home using known sales, because probably they're not known. I hope that answers your question.
We can make him get license plates and we'd know.
Mr. Chairman, at one point in time, they did have license plates, and that was removed from the statutes because law enforcement just did not have the time to drive down the road to make sure every mobile home that was set on the ground had a license plate on it. So yeah, that did change.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you leave, Mr. Grinvig, Mr. Chairman, a mobile home though, the pattern of taxes that a mobile home pays, it's not trended back up, right? But I don't know if there's a floor on the depreciation, but it goes down and down and down. It never trends back up. Is that right?
That is true, Mr. Chairman. Most mobile homes depreciate fully as they age. I think the life expectancy on a mobile home is 30 years. And so in 30 years, it's probably down at that 20% floor at that time. The mobile homes that you see around town that are from the 60s, 70s, most of those, their tax liability on those mobile homes is probably, anywhere between $10 and $20 for the year. So the mobile home value continues to go down, much like an automobile, unless it's a classic, but.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that means that mobile homes don't have this problem of the trending that other personal property has that people have complained about. So we can exclude it without hurting anything, but we've got an assessor that's trying to get on her feet here. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify. So mobile homes, as we treat them, they are personal property, exactly what Administrator Gill said, but we start with a cost table. So the department provides to us the cost tables for those mobile homes based on size, quality, condition. And those cost tables may go up every year because they're coming out of the Marshall and Swift is who the provider is that we currently have. And so those cost tables may go up every year. They're not trended, but they may go up based on the cost to replace that mobile home. And so then from that point, we start depreciating. So the difference between that and the tangible personal property is the taxpayers are reporting an installed cost. And that's where we're starting with that value. Typically on the personal property, we're starting with what they reported as an installed cost on a mobile home. I'm taking a 10 by 60 mobile home, going to the cost tables, putting in the proper characteristics for that mobile home and establishing a cost and then depreciating it for its age. So I don't want misled that the cost could not go up, because those tables do go up. They go down and they go up depending on what is happening in the world, just like the cost of a house being built goes up. But that's the differences in the two, and that's why it would make sense for them to be pulled out of this bill, because they're not being treated the same in our appraisal world as the tangible personal property are. They're not starting with the same kind of value and then depreciating differently.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assessor, so you start out with a baseline on that mobile home, let's say $50,000, and a few years go by and it's trending down, and maybe you value it at $40,000, and the person needs to move somewhere else for a job or whatever reason, and they sell it to their buddy or a relative for $20,000. At that point, what happens with your assessment role on that it was here and then it was sold down here? Does it automatically go down here where it was sold and it continue down, or how does that work?
Mr. Chairman, Senator French, when that's sold, all we know is the title changed names. They are not required to report to us that sales price. Now, some counties may be asking for it, and Converse County is one that does, asks for them to voluntarily tell me what that sales price is. I don't get a huge response from that. But I do that to try to determine if the cost tables are appropriate for my area. But that's not a requirement, and the taxpayer is not required to give us that sales price, and there is no mechanism currently for them to give us that sale price. So all we know is the property changed hands. And so we're back to that cost table and replacement cost, new less depreciation.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So it would, title change, but you would just continue as if nothing really happened on that trend table? That new owner would go where it originally was at?
Mr. Chairman, Senator French, typically that is correct, unless the new owner came in through the appeal process and say, hey, I bought this and it's really not, here's the reasons why it wasn't worth what I had it on, and then we can go make the corrections in our system and change the value. But it's not strictly driven by that sales price, which is different than the real property Mr. Gill was talking about, where you have to report a sales price and we use those sales in our analysis. That does not hold true for mobile homes.
Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Huxtable, I mean, that kind of seems a little bit unfair. And so could we like move into a system where if a taxpayer voluntarily reported the exchange price of a mobile home, that could become the basis for their taxes? I mean, you could check it out for legitimacy, but it may be much less than that cost table. And, you know, you have places where maybe the work situation changes and you've got a lot of mobile homes on the market right there, and, you know, prices go down, or, I mean, wouldn't that be more fair to the taxpayer?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Case, we are still required to be at fair market value, and one sale does not make a value. So we do not establish the price of your home based on the sales price. I would not think that would be appropriate on a mobile home either. Now, using that mobile home sales price in the analysis of setting the value for the mobile home, absolutely. And I would suspect that most assessors are doing that in some form or another. I just explained how I do it. I'm sure others do it as well. But we start with that replacement cost new and depreciate it, and then we have the ability to look at all forms of depreciation and determine if it needs to go down more or less, and it's driven by the characteristics of the property. So when that new owner comes in and says, hey, you got this at 30 and I only paid 20. Okay, let's go take a look at your mobile home. Let's see what we have incorrect and see what we can fix. And that's a standard response, I'm sure, from all 23 counties. It may or may not cause a lowering of the property. Maybe he got it for a good deal. We don't know if it was an arm's length transaction. Mobile homes are just a different scenario than real property. And so to your question, absolutely, it could make a difference, but I would be hesitant to say we should set the price based on that one sale.
But Mr. Chairman, just to kind of follow up, if I was, say, an oil field company and I bought a front end loader, for example, you would consider the price that I paid for that front end loader. That'd be the way that would begin, wouldn't it?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Case, yes, that would be our starting point to arrive at it. But in the personal property, remember, we have these trending things that bring that yesterday's dollar up to today's. And we have other factors that we can apply to that tractor. Maybe it's got an obsolescence factor or an economic factor that can be applied throughout the years. That's where the appraisal judgment comes into play. We still do that with mobile homes. We do that with personal property. We would do it with real property. There's just different mechanisms to reach that fair market value. But you're absolutely correct. In the personal property, that reported installed cost is what we're going to start with. And so it would be a good starting point, but the way we're doing mobile homes, I don't know that that would be fair based on how we're doing all the rest of them currently.
Understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I did email my staff and all 23 county assessors are certified. Say that with a caveat because we do have one vacated seat in the county assessor's office in Park County, but as of January 1, all 23 were permanently certified.
I think we're at a point now we can call for the question. We got another one we gotta get to, and we gotta be done by 1:30.
Mr. Chairman, so did we have a motion on the amendment?
I thought you did.
Before that, did that person come online? They're not on, no, they're not online.
We have a motion for the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Question, all those in favor of the proposed amendment to Senate File 49, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. That passes 3-2. On to the bill. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the amendment that was proposed in line 11 on page 2. Delete the words acquisition value and insert reported installed cost.
we have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. That amendment fails. I have two amendments I would like to put in there. The first one is, I move that we take the depreciation floor down to 0%. During the interim committee meetings we had, the goal was to have this property fall off the books after it's depreciated out. You're not paying 20% of a value on stuff that's ancient.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
That amendment does pass. And then on line 11, just kind of to clean it up, I would like to replace the term acquisition value with purchase value, because I think that can be tracked and it doesn't get tied up with acquisition value terms on a home.
Second.
All those in favor? Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Yes.
So if you say purchase value, then you don't want any transportation, any installation, anything. So if I buy a boiler, it's what I pay for the boiler. It doesn't include the fact that I have to hire someone to install the boiler. you know, I have to have the boiler brought up by a truck. None of that goes into that. It's just the catalog price that I paid for it.
That's where I'm getting with it.
Okay.
I have an issue with putting the cost of installation on the property tax books in perpetuity. It's installed once, and most of that stuff is already taxed as it happens. You get taxed on transportation, and you're gonna get taxed in many cases on the installation already. So to me, it seems like a double tax. That's why I wanna change that word.
And Mr. Chairman, just, if we were not talking about personal property, if we were talking about a building, we don't value a building by the fact that you can purchase 2x4s and cement for this a price. And we have to consider the fact that you have to get the stuff to the site. You have to hire someone to put those things together to make it into the thing that creates value. Just like you have to hire people to install the boiler that creates the value by making, you know, providing the hot water for your industrial operation or whatever. So it's just off, the catalog price is not the piece, and it can actually be gamed. You could have undercut catalog prices and shift costs in other ways, and kind of evade taxes if you think about it. But I appreciate your spirit, and I might be against you, but we'll be all right.
All right, any other comments, discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
That amendment passes. Now let's move on to the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
just a comment on the bill. You know, I probably would have voted for the bill, but now that it is dropping that percentage to 0, I can't. It just made a no-go for me on the bill. So I'm going to be a no vote on the bill.
Any other discussion?
Probably the same thing, Mr. Chairman. It really isn't the floor. I kind of agree with you on the floor. I think this, the installed cost is kind of an important piece of this. So I'll hang on that one. Yeah.
And we can definitely, when we go up before it comes up on committee of the whole, work
Yeah,
on
you
an
bet.
amendment, and maybe we can come to an agreement somewhere in the middle or something.
Sure.
Okay. No more further discussion? We're gonna vote on the bill. Will you take the roll?
This is a roll call vote on Senate File 49 as amended. Senator Case,
No.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Ide,
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
No.
Chairman McEwen.
Aye.
We have 3 aye and 2 no, Mr. Chairman.
Well, let's move into Senate File 48. I'm gonna regret saying these words, but this one should be a little easier. Okay, Mr. Gill, you want to start us out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken Gill, Property Tax Division, Department of Revenue. Senate File 48, pretty simple. If you remember where this started in the interim committee, it was a de minimis. We were looking at doing a de minimis and not a straight exemption. So in other words, the 50,000 de minimis, then the person that owned $50,001 paid taxes on all $50,001. So, but anyone below 50,000, then it was gone. Now, this is a straight up exemption. When I prepared this fiscal note, I did it per report. So, and that's a decision that the committee may want to take on. I did it per report. To give you an example, imagine a propane tank company that has propane tanks for houses in this tax district. They have 6 of them here. They have 20 in this district, 30 in this district, and so on. Well, they're gonna report for each district because each one of those districts, the mill levy could be different depending on the authorities within that district. So they're gonna give the county assessor 3, 4, 5 reports, whatever it may be, in this case of the propane tank company. That's how I did the fiscal note. I did it per report. Now, you may, it doesn't really say, it says a person. So does a person mean one company per county? The same company per state? Just something that you may want to consider on when you work this bill. Is it per account, per report, or is it per company? So if it's a propane tank company, is he getting $50,000 exemption on his tangible personal property on 5, 6, 7 reports? Or is he getting it one time on all of his reports combined? And that would be something that you'll need to define, I think, Mr. Chairman.
We can put some more clarifying language in there, but I think the way it's written now, it would fall back on basically the business licenses. So if you own 3 business licenses and you're running 3 separate businesses, you would get 3 separate exemptions. If you had all the businesses under one holding company, it would be 1 exemption.
Okay, and if that's great. I think you're right, if that's what that means in fair market value of business property owned by a person. So maybe that does mean each entity. So company XYZ, they may be reporting in multiple districts in that county. They would get one $50,000 exemption. But if they were different companies, that, you know, XYZ, ABC, even though they're all related, maybe then they would get, each report would get 50,000. So it was just food for thought, Mr. Chairman. It was something that I thought of, and I think the assessors probably have some comments on that too, because they're administering this on a daily basis. So just some clarification for you to think about and the committee to think about. With that, Mr. Chairman, it's pretty straight ahead. You saw the fiscal note. It was done per account and not per company. So I would, if the intention is per company, I would assume that fiscal note would go down some. I don't know how much. I just didn't do that analysis. There's so many ways to put names of companies in, whether XYZ Corp, XYZ Corporation, and I wasn't going to assume that both of those names were the same, so.
Is it possible to get that fiscal note fairly quickly? So that when we take it up on the floor, if it should pass, we'd have that information available?
Yeah, the fiscal note's tied to the bill on the website there, but I could sure get you a copy.
But I thought you said the way you put it together was with separate entities, but if we did it by license, or most everybody's organized in an LLC or an S Corp, and is that set up, you said that might drop?
It could, Mr. Chairman. The reason I said that, I did that per account. So every report that the assessor received, whether it be from the same company, XYZ Corporation, if XYZ reported to that same assessor 5 different times because they're in 5 districts, I took 50,000 off of each of those reports. And I didn't take 50,000 off of XYZ's all 7 reports combined together. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I guess my question is the difference substantial?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that. I didn't do the analysis per business license, as you say, or per company. I did it per report that they reported. It was too hard to know that those naming conventions were the same.
I go back to my question. Can we get a copy of it done the other way? Or at least an estimate?
Mr. Chairman, I can sure give it a shot. I have the raw data where I have the names of the companies, and I'm assuming this is per county. I have the names of the companies. I can give it a shot. I can't promise that it's gonna be great results, but I can sure give it a shot, sir.
And I think we're gonna have to get it done because The same question seems to arise on any tax exemption bill. So if we can look at that, that will certainly help us up here
Sure.
develop policy that is clear and transparent, and then you can follow too.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I will sure try to do it by company, by business license, or however you state that. I can try, I'll give it a good college try, sir, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure that the results will be super accurate. It was very easy to do it per report. As you can imagine, same company reporting in multiple districts, one account probably went away with the $50,000 exemption, and maybe one account didn't. The other topic that you might think of, and the assessors probably will bring this up, is if we are doing it per company, do we do it on a prorated basis? I mean, you know, we have that propane tank company, and we're gonna take $50,000 off his business, no matter where he reported in the county. We're gonna take $50,000 exemption on his business personal property. Where do we take that from? Do we take it from one account, or do we say, well, he has 7, so we're gonna take 50,000 divided by 7 and take that off of each account? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure how the assessors can probably speak to that better as they do it every day. But it is food for thought that if it is per company, do we just wipe out one tax bill? And so that district, those authorities don't receive the monies from that, but the other districts do? Or do we do it on a prorated basis?
I think it's kind of clear we'd have to do it on a prorated basis. I am giving you some homework. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. I'll see what I can get done, and I'll get it to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. And now the non-agencies.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dixie Huxtable, and I do have, that was really the only question that the assessors had, was define person. And the example he gave is good. I have oil companies that have hundreds of accounts, same company, 100 accounts, same district. Do I allocate them? Do I prorate them? Do I just divide it? I have ranchers that have, not just ranchers, but entities that have multiple business names, but it's the same people in the corporation. Does it matter? I'm fine with what I understood you to say. If they're operating as a different business name, Huxtable Inc., Huxtable LLC, Huxtable LP is all the same people, but they each get a $50,000 deduction if they so report. If that's the intent, that's fine. We just want to make sure we're understanding the clarity of the bill so that we're doing it, because this is not an application process. They don't get to tell me which one they want it on, or at least there's not an opportunity for that. It's just a $50,000 exemption, and it doesn't change the reporting, so they still have to report it all. Or unless you change that portion of the language that I was not aware of in this, that they are still obligated to report to us every year all the equipment that they have. So I just need some clarity on that so we know what to expect in the next tax year, sir.
If we pass this and take it up on the floor, we'll look at some clarifying language to put in that simplifies that process.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator,
can I ask Ms. Huxtable a question? It probably does matter how we do this, because companies would have choices how they take advantage of this exemption. Could you give an example how it could go one way versus another way? And if you were a company and you were looking to pay less taxes, how would you choose?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Case, absolutely. I think we already see that a little bit with even just the small de minimis bill, where they're reporting their equipment. Remember, this is self-reporting, and we do not go out and audit every one that comes in. So I have individuals or companies that report the equipment in different locations based on mill levies, based on one area where they have a ranch may have a different mill levy than the other, maybe different counties. And we report equipment in different locations, potentially could be because of the tax rate. There could be an interest if I have the same I've bought 3 pieces of land and I've got a different name on each piece of land in my ranch. And I'm gonna put some of my equipment on each one of those. I'm gonna render it that way, that this company owns this company owns that. It was 150,000 total, but now I'm gonna split it between the 3 and I don't owe any tax on any one of those. And if that's the intent, we will administer it as such. But I can certainly see that being something that could happen. It already does happen to a small degree because you've only got a de minimis of 2,400. And the next piece of the pie is the reporting. This does not change the reporting, so they still need to report. And would the belief be that because it's exempt, I don't have to report?
And then, Mr. Chairman, if I could give an example, I'll be quick. So I have a business and we have 3 buildings. They're probably business personal properties distributed equally between the 3 buildings, just pretend like it. Couldn't I hold those 3 buildings in different corporate names? Especially there's a law, you can have a series LLC, and so there'd be 3 different LLC companies who would hold each of those buildings. Just say for purpose of example, now that the personal property falls to 50,000 or less within those buildings, would that be a way I could not pay any taxes on the business personal property?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Case, absolutely.
Good, thanks for the idea. It'll probably cost me $1,000 to put them in those forms.
Certainly, sir.
The other comment I'd like to make, some of these exemption and relief bills we're putting together now are on the eve of the interim where we're gonna look at some serious tax reform. So if we can pull that off, this is sort of a temporary fix to get help out there now. Anybody else?
Yeah. Are we gonna move the bill or?
Go ahead and move.
Not yet.
No, oh, we got it.
That's what anybody else meant.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in support of this bill. The way I read this is that it says owned by a person in each county. So if Ex Hart Ranch was in Crook and Weston County, it would depend on where I report this property. If I report it all in Crook County and nothing in the other county, I get a $50,000 exemption. If I report it in both counties, I would get a $50,000 in each county. If that's the way I read it right now. If that's not the intent, if it's $50,000 per business entity, this does need to be clarified. But I like this bill, and to Senator Case's point, regardless of how you write this, that can be done. It'll be an economic question. Is the cost of filing worth the deduction? And that's an individual thing, but sitting in support of this bill, you know, the way I read it, it's per person, per county. That's the way it's written. So and we're fine with that.
Thank you.
If there's any questions for me, sir, you or the committee?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I would just echo that the Petroleum Association is in support of the bill.
Oh, thank you. Any other public comment? Do we have anybody online? I guess we'll close public comment and work the bill. Does anybody have any amendments they want to put in it?
Mr. Chairman, has anyone moved the bill?
I'll move the bill.
Second.
Senate File 48 has been moved and seconded. Now we'll move on to working the bill. You're all gonna have to put up with me for a day or two. It's kind of new.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Short and sweet, we got to go. I think this is a good step be nice to just repeal it all, in my opinion, but my belief is property taxes fundamentally infringe on property rights to begin with, so I'm an aye on this bill. Thank you.
This is actually a big step for me. I wanted to get rid of all of it. But, so I'm in support of the bill. No further comment? Want to call the roll, please?
This is a roll call vote on Senate File 48, Business Property Exemption. Senator Case? Senator French?
Aye.
Senator Ide?
Aye.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
Chairman McEwen?
Aye.
You have 4 aye and 1 no, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, nothing about the bill.
Senator Case.
I think we talked, and Donna, you'll have to help me, but if, for people that are online listening and we do the roll calls and some of us don't have our microphones on, I think we talked about having you repeat the vote. Do you guys remember that? I think that's where we ended up on that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good idea. So if you, so it'd be like if Case says no, then you say Case no, and then go to the next one. Is that okay? Yeah,
I can do that.
you bet.
Do you like
See
me
you
to
Monday?
repeat the
Wanna
votes?
do it real quick now?
Okay, sure. Senator Case, no. Senator French, aye. Senator Ide, aye. Senator Pappas, aye. Chairman McEwen, aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
Who shows up right after we did all the good work?
Her ears were probably burning.